welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is the first time that you are joining me here. This is the first time I'm joining me here in quite a long time, but I was watching Katy Flowers' Only 10 Decks video, and then I was saving a whole load of VRs to my watch later, and I've got like 13 to 15 videos in there to watch. And I was thinking to myself, well, what decks would I keep? I don't think it would be that hard to pick 10 decks to keep out of all my Oracle and Tarot decks. I'm sure I could easily pick 10 and it wouldn't be that stressful. I like all my decks, but there's probably only one or two that I would really want to keep hold of if I had no choice. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. So then I was thinking about it and I was making a list, and then I thought, you know what? I might as well just make the video and share this information with everybody. That's the dog sneezing, by the way, bless you. So I haven't really been hugely connected to my tarot and oracle practice lately, and I'm trying to slowly find my way back into that. So this was quite an interesting little experiment from that perspective as well. And I found that actually I started with the oracle decks, and I had like 4 oracle decks, or 5. I thought like half the number of oracle, half tarot seemed reasonable, right? But I kept swapping out oracle decks for tarot decks that I actually wanted to keep. So I only ended up with 2. So I'll show you both of those. I'm sure I've talked about both of these in videos before. Don't know which ones. I don't even know if those videos are still on my channel because I've done a bit of a cleanup of some videos lately. But the first one is the Sacred Destiny Oracle by Denise Linn. I really love this deck. I haven't actually worked with it for ages, but it was a deck that helped me. I always thought that I needed like more. I needed keywords, or I needed a phrase, or I needed something in a deck in order to be able to use it effectively. And this was kind of the deck that made me realise what I really love is the simplicity in this deck. And I love how something can be so simple and yet so deep at the same time, and that simplicity doesn't mean shallow. And I just found that with the picture and the one word, it really sparked my own intuitive thoughts, my own intuitive ideas. And I really love to work with this one. I particularly love to pair this with a tarot deck, and it, in my opinion, works with pretty much every tarot deck. But I do also think that it works really well with very complex, detailed tarot decks to give it that duality, that sense of balance. But even on its own, I love this deck. So I don't think I would be able to part with this deck just now. I think it's, I'm really seriously considering cutting right back on my oracle decks, but this is one I think I would definitely like to keep hold of. And the other oracle deck that I really want to keep hold of right now, and I do use, and I use it all year round despite the name, is the Halloween Oracle by Stacey DeMarco. And this is another one, actually. It has a little bit more than that one. So it has, mainly it's a picture, it has a title and then a keyword. And again, I find this deck really intuitive to work with. I pair it with all of my decks, tarot decks, quite well. It works on its own quite well. It's just a deck that I really, really love. I really appreciate the artwork. I love the kind of darkness of it. And Halloween is, I'm a witch. It's my favorite time of the year. But yeah, this is another one where I think I wouldn't be quite ready to pass it out of my collection just yet. And I would want to keep hold of it. So those are really the only 2 oracle decks that I picked. And then with tarot decks, I went with, they're not even necessarily the decks that I use the most. I was trying to think of a way to do this. So I was like, do I want to go with the decks that I use the most, or do I want to go with, and that doesn't really work because I tend to swap through my collection and try and use them all. So that doesn't really work. Do I want to go with the ones that have the most like sentimental value or has some kind of story behind them? But some I feel like that and some I don't, and some I really love to use and some I barely use but I still wouldn't get rid of. Like, it was a whole thing. So in the end I just went deck by deck and just thought, am I ready to move this out of my collection? And I managed to get it down to the ones that actually probably no. So these are in no particular order, but the first one is the Robin Wood Tarot, and this one is very much nostalgic reasons. So I have this deck. This is my second copy of this deck because I did have another copy of this deck which had much better cardstock, by the way, than this one, but otherwise was exactly the same, that I had trimmed and I'd edged and I'd had for like, I think I got it 10 years ago, 9-10 years ago. It was the first tarot deck that I ever really started to work with, although I didn't really connect with tarot and really get into tarot until I got the Everyday Witch. But this one I used to use quite a lot. I used to have like a Sunday tarot hour where I would sit down and I would get the deck out and I would shuffle and I'd go through books and I'd do my own little readings. And then the dog ate it, basically, is what happened to the first deck. I got a puppy. And anybody who's ever owned a puppy will know. If you know, you know. And yeah, and then I bought this deck as a gift from Jen over at Jen's Balanced Tarot when she came to the UK back in 2019, maybe, September 2019, to replace the one that I had. And I love this deck. I know this deck intimately because I used to be part of a study group, a pagan study group, and 1 month we did divination and I did like a whole study of this deck, like in detail, describing all the cards and looking into the colors and all of that kind of stuff. So I know this deck really intimately, and it is one that I will probably continue to work with on and off as long as I continue to work with tarot, which hopefully will be forever, but who knows, right? So that would be the first one I would keep. And then the second one I would keep, I've already mentioned, which is the Everyday Witch, which I don't even know where the box is. I think it's in the bedroom somewhere. But this was, as I said, this was the first deck that I really felt like, I've said this in another video recently, like this was the first deck I think where I thought, holy fuck, I could actually do this. I could actually do this. You know, I could stop relying on books and reading like very like, this card means this and this card's keywords are this, and actually read them and connect with them and have my own thoughts and feelings and intuitions on what they mean, and you know, be able to work outside of set refined meanings and spreads and stuff. Like, wow, I could actually see myself being able to do this. And I just fell in love with this deck, and I fell in love with the tarot in a way that I never really had before. And so again, there's so much tied up into how I feel about this deck and how I connected with this deck that, again, it's one that I just don't think I'm quite ready to move out of my collection just yet. So that's tarot deck number 2, but it's actually deck number 4. I'm not going to count because I'll lose count and then I'll just confuse myself. Next up is a deck that I actually don't read with very often at all, but waited for years for this deck and was interested in this deck before I was even really interested in tarot in the way that I am now. And I'm so grateful to have a copy of it. And that is the Alice Tarot by Baba Studios, I think is who it is. But so if you've been around for a little while, you'll know that I am a pretty huge Alice in Wonderland fan. I read the book so many times as a child. I saw the Disney film hundreds of times. I reread the book every now and again as an adult. You know, anything Alice related, I'm 100% there for. And this was a deck that I just really wanted. And the first time I saw this deck, I ever saw this deck, a friend of mine was telling me about it and we were looking it up online. And at that point, it was out of print. And that was the friend that I had who very much got me into tarot. We had like a blog together for a while and we did our Instagram together, and then sadly she passed away from cancer in 2018. So when the deck came out, I was like, even if I don't buy this for myself, I have to buy this for Chrissy. So yeah, there was the whole, like, I have to have this. We talked about this so much. And although I don't tend to reach for it all that much, if I'm completely honest, I just love it. I just love it as another Alice thing that I have in my collection. And I could have picked, I also have another Alice tarot deck. So I have the Tarot in Wonderland by Llewellyn, and I have the Alice Oracle that I can't remember exactly what it's called right now. Alice the Wonderland, I think it's called. So I could have picked either of them, but I think if I was only going to keep one Alice thing in my collection, it would be this one. Next up, we have a deck that I love and I do read with a lot, and that is the This Might Hurt Tarot deck by Isabella Rotman. Now, it was kind of a toss-up between this one and the Modern Witch Tarot by Lisa Searle, because I want and have always wanted and was very keen to have an RWS deck in my collection. And I do have one. I do actually have a RWS deck, like with Pixie's artwork, and I can't remember which one it is, but I think it's borderless. I don't know, I can't remember. I never use it. I use it to study with, but I don't read with it. But I don't love Pixie's artwork, and I'm very much kind of like modern girl. I want the tarot to reflect the world that I live in. And so I wanted an RWS clone that was a more modern representation of the world that I actually live in, and the kind of people that I see and the kind of experiences that I might actually have in the world around me. And so this one and the Modern Witch Tarot both do that really well. Of the two, it's a really hard choice, and I think I almost went like eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a child by their toe kind of thing in the end, because I had no idea what I was doing and how I was going to decide. But ultimately, I think I do like this one a little bit more than I like the Modern Witch Tarot. I think I like the art style a bit more. I like the cardstock a bit more. And this one has both men and women in it, whereas the Modern Witch is a female-only deck. And this one I think has non-binary in it as well. So I like that it's got that mix across the spectrum. This one has a few old people in it, young people in it. You know, it's just kind of very much representative of the kind of world that I actually live in. This is probably going to be a long one because I feel like I haven't spoke to people about tarot other than the live that I do with Julie and Sarah once a month for ages. And so I'm kind of chatting, but I'll put maybe I'll put timestamps or something to the different numbers of the different number decks, so you can see what the deck is and then skip the waffling and see what the next deck is. I'll see how that works out. The next one, again, kind of connects very, very well with the reason that I also went for the This Might Hurt. That's the Next World Tarot. And again, this is kind of a combination. So the cardstock on this is huge, like huge, but there's so much detail in these cards that I'm just not sure it would work if it was smaller. But this is a combination of, I'm really into dystopian, like, fiction. I like worlds that I like fiction that's set in dystopian worlds. I do quite like that. And this has a real dystopian feel to it. But also I think it beautifully represents the type of people living in the world that I actually live in many ways. And so I love it for that. I love it for its diversity. I love it for its just overall style and feel. It reads really well. yeah, I love this picture. I love the Lovers. I love it when the Lovers does this, where it's basically a reflection of yourself. I enjoy that. You don't see that very often, but when you do, I really like it. So yeah, I love this. I just love this deck. I don't really have anything more profound than that to say. I feel like I should have something more profound, but I don't. I just really like working with this deck, despite the size. The next one I have also, I know I've talked about more than once on my channel in different ways, in different VRs. It's come up for different reasons. I can't get this deck back in the box. That's the other thing. I'm not too keen on the... Oh, okay, I'll sort that later. I just really like this deck, and that's the Lightsaber Tarot by Krisan. I call this my boho chick deck. It's got like a real bohemian vibe to it. I think it's got a real sense of... It's one of those decks that I've definitely said before, that quite often people bring it up as like a young feel to it, but I don't really get that at all. I feel a sense of maturity and the freedom that comes from letting go of the expectations and the views of others, and really leaning into and embracing who you are, what you stand for, what's important to you, and how you genuinely want to show up in the world. And that's the kind of vibe I get from this deck, but also in a very chilled out kind of way. So I really love it. I love working with it. I love every single card. I don't think there's any, there's not many cards I don't like. You know, this is one I'm definitely keeping hold of. And I also have the Muse Tarot by Krisan. And I like both, but I'm much more of a fan of the Lightseers. The Lightseers is definitely one I would like to keep hold of. Just two more, I promise, and then I'm done. So the next one is another one I've only really read with for a little while. It's a Kickstarter. It's a relatively new one, so I don't have huge amounts of feelings on it one way or the other right now. And that's the Tarot Renard. So it seems a bit weird to say this is one I would keep hold of, but I don't really have huge feelings about the deck one way or another. But again, if you've been around for a while and you know me at all, you'll know that I have a really deep spiritual connection with foxes, canines in general, but foxes specifically. And I have always wanted to find the perfect fox tarot for my personal collection. And I think I have done that with this deck. I love it. And I love how each card is like an individual piece of artwork, like in a way that I know all decks are individual pieces of artwork, but this one feels like 78 individual pieces of art that just combine into a beautiful whole picture. I don't know how else to describe it. I love it. I really do love it. I don't necessarily pull it out all the time to read with. And, you know, the cardstock is really thick, which makes it really hard for me to shuffle because I have pretty bad arthritis in my wrists and my fingers. So my fingers and my hands hurt quite a lot, and it makes it really difficult for me to shuffle thick cardstock like this. But I love every single picture, every single piece of artwork in this deck just speaks to me on a very spiritual level. And I adore this deck. I just genuinely adore the way this deck looks and feels, and it just makes me feel like I'm developing a much deeper connection with my spirit guide, who happens to come to me in the form of a vixen. And last but not least, it would be remiss of me not to include my own tarot deck that I created with Sarah and Julie. This is the Bangtan Tarot. It's a BTS deck. We created it over many mad, long conversations via Messenger over a period of about a month. And I usually carry this around with me. I have read for others with this deck, which is something I don't do very often. I don't read for people very often, but I read for a work colleague with it recently, and I've read for others. I love this deck. I'm very, very proud of this deck and what we achieved with it. And also I just kind of like to look at it, like, not gonna lie. But yeah, like, I could get rid of all of the rest of these decks and keep this one, and I would still be fairly happy with my tarot collection at that point. So this one is going nowhere anytime soon. I love it. And that is my 10 decks, only 10 decks video. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm really grateful to you for popping in and saying hello and giving me a watch, because I know I've not been around at all for a very, very long time on my own channel. I've been on Julie's channel, Peekaboo Rose, and Sarah's channel, Sunset Bow, doing our 3 Girls 1 deck. We have another one coming on the 4th of September. No. Wow. 4th of December. My year is just all rolling into one now. We have one coming on Saturday, the 4th of December at 6 p.m. GMT. I don't know. I can't remember what times they are in other places, but keep an eye out for that. It will be on Julie's channel, and she will post something up very, very soon, so you can set yourself a reminder. And we're going to do a special this time where we talk about decks that we've been talked into buying as a result of this series and how that's kind of worked out for us. So come and give that a watch, and we will be very happy to see you there. Otherwise, take care, everybody. Hopefully I will be back again at some point soon. Who knows? Love you loads.